Well, welcome everybody to Black Past, and today we are in Exeter, and we're continuing our discussion on Operation Tonga. So this is on Twitch. This is the live Recon 3 episode, and we're just going to take off over here, and we'll start talking about the run up to D-Day, and we'll do a bit of a summary of what we've talked about. So we're at Exeter Airport here, and we're just ready to go. Release the handbrake, bit of rudder. Airspeed is active. Let's get the gyro on. Wait for about 55-ish knots. We'll up. There we go. Let's get 15 degrees on the nose. Bring in the flaps. Okay, let's just sort out this autopilot. Let's put a altitude of about 1,500 feet. And we'll go up at about 500 odd feet. I'm going to make it 600. Nav on. Let's turn towards our pink line. Let's hit autopilot. Let's see if that works. There we go. So we're flying here over Exeter. We are, in terms of, just going to check this doesn't look right. Where are we going? Where are we going? What you doing? As you can tell, I'm doing this live. All right, so we're in Exeter. The date is May 1944. And what we have here is, as we've been discussing, we've had Major John Howard. He's been put in charge. He's in charge of D Company. He's been put in charge of this coup de main operation on D-Day to capture the bridges over the Caen Canal and the Orne River Canal at Neuville and Ranville in Normandy. And he is given all the resources he needs and to fulfill this operation. And one of the things he requests at the time is for the people in the Madhouse, Broadmoor, which we discussed as in Durrington in Wiltshire, to find some bridges in the UK with a similar layout as the ones in Normandy. And below here, right below us now, these are the bridges that they came up with. This is the Countess Weir Bridge in Exeter over the River Exe. And as you can see, it's got two bridges, one over a canal, which I believe is the one on the left, and one over the river. So as we are looking north this way, these bridges are in the same sort of alignment that we're going to find when we get to Normandy. The operation occurred. They didn't use glider drops. Obviously, it's way too dangerous at this point to do that. So they were driven to their launching off points in trucks, and then they're told when to start. So technically speaking, where that building is, it would be the equivalent of where they land. This one here would be Pegasus Bridge, and this one here would be the Horsa Bridge. So they would be dropped off, hoping that they would be in this area here, and the gliders 3 to 6, these chaps would be dropped off in this area here to attack this bridge here. They spent 6 days in and around this area practicing non-stop. They learned a lot from Operation Biz 1 and 2 and Operation Mush, where they had learned a lot about communication. They would attack these bridges shouting out their platoon numbers in order not to be shot at themselves. So this is Countess Weir. So this is the main exercise just before D-Day. Now, we'll just anything else about this area anyone wants to add, then please do. This is one interesting fact is one of the guys, I think, found out that they'd been billed for some damage to some roofs that they damaged in these exercises when they got back. So there's the thanks you get. So that's the Countess Weir Bridge. Now what I'm going to do now, just to keep things moving along, we're going to come out, we're going to switch aircraft to the DC 3. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to move now to a place called Tarrant Rushton, which is near Blandford Forum. which is over here. I think if we zoom in around this area, Tarrant Rushton, there we go. So this will be our departure point. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually do the operation that they did. So that's where we will take off, and our objective is here, but I think they cross somewhere between Camberg and Merville. So I'm going to put well, let's put the arrival actually on the bridge, I suppose. This will be our arrival point. Now, so we're now talking date-wise. We'll be talking is the 5th of June, well, 5th and 6th. Of June 1944. They didn't fly direct like this. In fact, it doesn't make sense to do that. They were being towed, these gliders. We'll get when we get there. They were being towed by Halifaxes. They're 4-engine things. I haven't got one of those, so we'll do a DC-3. And what I know is from one of the guys' verbal reports to the Imperial War Museum was that he believed that they crossed the Channel coast between Bognor Regis and Worthing. So let's have a little look. Yeah, so it's the guy was called Dennis Edwards, and in his verbal interview with the Imperial War Museum, he mentions that the gliders took off and they actually headed towards Reading. So when Reading is up here, looking at this, it makes sense possibly that they would fly to an airfield or towards an airfield, because the airfield could provide radio beacons or even flashlight signals for the formations to form up. So I'm gonna assume when he says Reading is going to be not maybe as far as that, and I think it will put Farnborough maybe a good first leg. From there they turn right, and it kind of makes it, there's two airfields as you can see here. One is at Bognor Regis and one is at Shoreham. It makes sense that they would cross somewhere over these, and it makes more sense that they go across here, because as you see, this then creates an easy to remember pattern. There is a formation, you take off, there's a formation above Tarrant Rushton, they move off towards another airfield. That airfield then they take basically a right 90-degree turn, head to Shoreham. They've got the ability to signal to the formations that they're on course, and then from that point it's a very simple south. You know, there's no complex number to follow. I mean, it's basically dead on south. And of course, then you would then probably get to the coastline. You may be able to see the estuary there. You then head possibly to a gap that's been identified by the RAF between Camberg, which is here, or the river. You might be able to see the River Dives estuary and the Orne estuary. So you head between those two in this little, which presumably was an anti-aircraft gap, and then you would do your approach into the bridges. So we're going to fly that, and we'll see how that goes. So let's just start. Tarrant Rushden was where the glider regiment practiced. So they performed something like 58 missions in practice for this operation. I'm just going to pause right there. So this is Tarrant Rushden Airfield. As you can see, it's not used anymore, but you can make out the runways. There was definitely one here. Running north-south. You can definitely see one here on a sort of a northwest, southeast trajectory. And these airfields, they presumably had a third one. I think you can see, just about see it here, going in a sort of an east-west direction. So this is where the gliders would form up, and Halifax bombers would connect up to them and take off. So let me just, oh, by the way, I'm on a Discord at the moment, and this is where my notes are. If you want to follow along, you can join me. Here, the link is in the profile. If you come down to D-Day, you'll see a pin post called Timeline, and then these are the chronological posts, so we can follow here. So as you can see, according to my notes, the D Company sealed it in here at this camp on the 5th of June 1944, and they're given a fatless meal to reduce the chances of air sickness. They're loaded into 6 Horsa gliders. Gliders 1 to 3 are destined to connect the Caen Canal Bridge, and Howard himself was in glider number 1. And gliders 4 to 6 were heading to the River Orne Bridge, and they were commanded by Howard's second in command, Captain Brian Priday. As I say, the gliders are towed by a Halifax bomber. They're a 4-engine bomber. They're all painted with the D-Day white stripes, I'm sure you're all familiar with, designed basically to make sure that any the friendly ships and aircraft don't fire upon them. And that makes more sense as well when you consider the route that they took. That they're going to be flying through down designated corridors, and so any aircraft flying in a certain direction in those corridors are sort of are deemed to be ally. And when they had, especially over the fleet, aircraft that are patrolling, they tended to use aircraft that were very easily distinguished from the ground. So over the fleet's task force in the English Channel, they would use the Lightning aircraft, which has got a twin boom tail, so it's quite easy to spot that silhouette. Anyway, so they're flying down these channels, north to south, with the stripes on. And the whole point of them being towed by Halifax bombers is, and that why they're heading up towards the northeast and Reading, but I believe possibly Farnborough, is that they're joining up with a bomber formation. And because they're joining up with the bomber formation, they can sort of sneak in there. But that means that the bombers themselves will carry on from what they're doing right now, from their dropping off the gliders, which is their primary mission, to do another mission, which is basically to bomb some cement works in the north east part of Caen. So they're going to be putting themselves into this formation. So let's start to synchronize what we're going to do with what they were doing. So at 22:40 hours, Howard synchronizes watches, and then he orders D Company to in plane. And at 22:56, the gliders begin to roll in 1 minute intervals. So let's. I'm going to start off with do this during the daytime to begin with, but once we're up, we'll change it. So we'll change it to UTC. I think there was double summertime at the time, so this might be. It could be 8:56. But we'll just put 10:56 for now. And the month was in June, so we'll move that back to June. Now, it was a full moon, and I believe the full moon in 2026 is on the 30th. So we'll just move it to the 30th here. It doesn't really matter, but it means that the moon will be in the right position. Weather-wise, we've got broken clouds. So at the time, I'm not going to worry about the winds, but the winds were high. I'm just going to get rid of some of these layers. We know the operation, they needed cloud base of 2,500 feet, but I believe it was more like 2,000. Feet. So put in 2,000 there. And the height of the tops, we know that they flew at about 6,000 feet. There is reports that they may have been at 4,500. I think their height depended on what they could see and what they got. So it's probably, if we put 5,000 in here, We can adjust it later when we see what it looks like. Reasonably scattered. We'll put some density on it, and we can adjust this when we get up into the air. Okay, so let's finish that. Now, I'm just going to get this all sorted here because this autopilot is a bit of a pain. Put that on. Let's keep the altitude. Let's see if that comes up there. No, please not. We're going to fly, I think, at 6,000 feet. So we'll turn it on. Autopilot on, and we'll see if that works. Okay, we seem to be climbing. Okay, good, that's good. So let's go give this a bit more. Okay. And so we're off. So we've taken off. It's 22:56, and we're on the way. We get above these clouds. So this we're starting off. We're in. Let's change this. So we took off from RAF Tarrant Rushden, and we're on the way now to meet up with our formation, our bomber formation. We're climbing steadily. And we should get above the clouds soon. So yeah, so when we get up there, we'll adjust the times and things like that. The gliders rolled in 1 minute intervals and climbed to about 6,000 feet. So which we're on our way to doing. Okay. So as you can see here with the times, we're looking at a flight time here of about 45 minutes. They took off at about 11 o'clock, and we know that they arrive at 16 minutes past midnight. So you know, there could be a little bit of adjustment. They may have gone a bit further north, whatever. They could have probably gone a little bit slower. We'll never know, but it seems to be about the right sort of time for the formation to get over there. So we're on our first leg. Okay. Yeah, so they talk. I mean, I'm looking at my notes here. They do say that it takes about 40 minutes for them to get over the Normandy coast. So I think we're in a sort of ballpark area. The glider, number 1 glider, was piloted by Staff Sergeant Jim Warwick, and we could try to get rid of that. Don't need all that. So this is Broken Cloud. I might just need to take off that top cloud. Let's do that, because we know we got a moonlit night. I think, yeah, then we can do it like that. Okay, so let's see if we can just make this look. Just increase the density. So we know that it was broken. We know from other reports, especially the US airborne landings, that the formations were hitting cloud banks. So I might just increase the tops of this to about... We'll try that. We can always adjust it later. And now we can then go to change this time now to the evening. Sorry if you can't see this for a bit, bear with. So we're looking at about 11 o'clock. Just push this through almost to there we go, we'll put it up out there. So we've got a full moon, we've got broken cloud. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the positioning lights, put the compass light on, put that panel lights on, and we're going to turn off the beacon lights. So we've got a dark plane, moonlit night. Of course, during the war, we wouldn't have any lights, street lights, at all. So okay. So should be getting up to 6,000 feet. Yep, we're at 6,000. Okay, I might just reduce that the tops of the cloud a little bit. Let's just reduce this to 6,000. There we go. Right. So we're on the way. So, quick recap. Monty's come up with his plan. General Gale has ordered 6th Airborne to plan to drop on the eastern side of the invasion beaches. And Major Howard's been given the job of capturing these bridges over the Orne. The 6th Airborne is a mixture of paratroopers and gliderborne, and it was deemed necessary that these bridges had to be captured by a glider operation because they needed to land a lot of men in one area quickly. If they put these guys down in paratroops, then the Germans had all the time in the world to blow the bridges up. So they needed to get in and get it done. The idea was that they would capture the bridges. They would blow up the bridges on the Divers, I think is the way you pronounce it, which is the river further to the east. The Canadian paratroopers were tasked with that mission. They will protect these bridges on this side to get a bridgehead over the Orne. Because when you look at the map, there is high ground to the east of the Orne, called the Breville Ridge, which is this area here. And they wanted to make sure they can capture that, because from that ridge the Germans would be able to bombard the Sword Beach, which is this beach up here. This land is low. The rest of the land is low. Germans have flooded a lot of areas, so it wasn't. It was important that these connecting routes were captured. They were fully expecting that the bridges would be blown. They were taking in the aircraft. They were taking boats, basically, in order to in order to protect both sides of the blown up bridges. And of course they were taking over Bailey bridges to capture put these bridges in place after D-Day, and these were known as Tower Bridge, or London Bridge 1 and 2. So they knew that Pegasus Bridge itself wasn't going to be enough for their purposes, but it was useful to capture. The code name for the capture of the bridges was Ham and Jam. If it was done. Inside, so this plane would be towing a glider. Inside the glider would be 30 odd men. In fact, I believe I have the list, the order of battle. I'm not sure I'll read all of these out, but let's just say that this is the number 1 plane. This comes from Private Dennis Edwards' book, The Devil's Own Luck. So the Halifax aircraft was piloted by Wing Commander Duda, and the gliders were the glider was piloted by Jim Warwick, who's a staff sergeant, and John Ainsworth, another staff sergeant, was his co-pilot. So the first glider had Major John Howard and his Batman, basically his support guy, Corporal Tappenden. It contained number 1 platoon, so you can equate glider 1, platoon 1, which was actually number 25 platoon. Yeah, it gets confusing. And this was commanded by Lieutenant Den Brotheridge. And in the glider there was Sergeant Ollis, Corporal Kane, Corporal Webb, Corporal Bailey, Lance Corporal Packwood, Lance Corporal Minns, Private Barlam, Private Bates, Private Ballard, Private Chamberlain, Private Dennis Edwards, Private Gardner, Private Gray, O'Donnell, Wally Parr, Tilbury, Watson, White, Windsor and Jackson. And it also contained a contingent of Royal Engineer sappers from the 249th Field Engineer. These were led by Corporal Watson, Sapper Danson, Sapper Ramsey, Wheeler and Yates. Now, their job was to disarm any explosives on the beach, on the bridge. So that's glider 1. So how many is that? So let me just quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So that's including the pilots, that's 30. And 30 men. Glider 2 was Lieutenant David Wood's platoon was in that one, which was number 24 platoon, but it was now number designated number 2 for the coup de main raid. And yeah, so here we looks like we're turning here. This is Farnborough. Yep, so we're just turning it, and so this is a right-hand turn. So an airfield like that would probably be set up to accommodate these people. They did a 90-degree turn, and then they head to Shoreham. Now, I don't know if this is actually what happened, but this makes the most sense. One thing you don't want to do is have complicated maneuvers. You don't want to be doing anything, some weird bearings or anything like that. You know, it's fly this bearing, turn 90 degrees, fly this bearing, hit shore and fly south, hit coast, release your gliders, go on and do your mission. Oh, no. Oh, it's always very sensitive if you move this thing around. Okay. So, Glider 3 was Richard Smith's platoon was in that one. Glider 4 was the one with the second in command, Briday. Captain Pride's one, and Lieutenant Tony Hooper was in that one. And then Glider 5 and 6. So Glider 5 was Todd Sweeney's platoon was in that one. Yeah. So by the way, if you want to join me, you can join me. Fly the mission yourself. I'm on the European West server. So we're coming up on Shoreham. And this is all from Dennis Edwards' recollections. He was it's a really interesting listen, actually. You can go to the Imperial War Museum website, and there's links in the Discord channel. You'll be able to find his recollections. Here it is. This one here. Interview with Dennis Edwards in the Imperial War Museum archives. So, and you can see this is the list here of all the people in the mission. I won't go through every single one, but this is from Dennis Edwards' excellent book, and he lists who was and wasn't on the mission. So we're heading to the south coast right now. Just coming up on Shoreham. So we know from records that the weather, so there was a full moon, and obviously the Germans knew that the full moons were likely to be used in any invasion, but because there had been a storm the day before, they didn't believe that the weather conditions were right this time. Eisenhower had already postponed the mission, the D-Day, for 24 hours. So they would have been going in on the 4th. Instead, they're going in on the 5th. This actually works out very well because a lot of the German leaders, Rommel, for example, they decide that there isn't going to be an invasion because of the weather, so they all go off. They go back to Paris or Germany or Berlin or whatever, and remarkably, the whole chain of command, the senior chain of command of the Germans, is almost non-existent, or they're all scattered all over the place, and they're very, very, very hard to find and contact. on the morning of the 6th. So the delay, the weather actually works in the Allies' favour. As I say, the winds were strong, gusting still at this point. The cloud base, the Allies felt they needed a 2,500 cloud base for operations. It was dodgy in terms of where that cloud base was. There are reports that it was at about 2,000, and this puts all the pilots that are flying in a little bit low when they're coming in. The cloud banks themselves means that a lot of the aircraft get scattered. We're talking mainly about the US landings, because the natural response of any pilot, if you fly into a cloud bank and you're following another plane as close as this, I mean, you're probably flying oops. You're probably flying, like, you know, here, flying into a cloud bank, and you're likely to, your natural reaction is to move away. So this is the coast. This is, Shoreham is below us. So as I say, I don't know this, but it would make sense that an airfield will be able to signal the formations as they fly over, to say that they're on the right track, or even a radio beacon. And as you can see, we now turn directly south. So now we are on the way over the coast. Going to fly over the Navy, the D-Day landing fleet. So we got broken cloud. We also know the official records say that they flew at about 6,000 feet. By the way, these lights are modern wind farm out on the in the channel, so they won't be there. Yeah, so we know that they flew officially at 6,000 feet. I believe it might have been Dennis Edwards. He believed, yeah, he believed that the altitude that they got let off at over Normandy was about 4,500 feet. I think we're in that range, 4,500 to 6,000 feet. It will probably depend on how high the clouds are as you're going over. Maybe when they started off at 6,000 feet, because that's the height of the clouds on the UK side. But maybe when they got over to Normandy, the height of the clouds maybe it was 4,500 feet. We don't know. What we do know, though, is that when they got there, when they got let off, they all reported that the gliders went into a steep dive. And this is for a number of reasons, but the most important one was they needed to get below the cloud base to see where they're going to land. It also meant that you're not going to be likely to be shot down. If you're lower, you've got less chance of being shot down because you're going faster. You also maybe look like a bomber that's been shot down, so that could be something. But they dived steeply, got beneath the cloud, and tried to sort of find landmarks using the moonlight. And we are obviously going to get some street lights when we're over there, but presumably, you see, the moon is going to reflect off the water, and it will show up the Orne River, the Orne Canal, the Divers River, and then when they were flying in, the co-pilot would set a point. Presumably, I'm going to assume the point of release was over the coastline because that makes the most sense, because that's the thing you can see. And then they would use a stopwatch to fly a certain bearing. I think they kept it simple. Probably just flew south, and then they, on about 3 minutes something, they would turn right 90 degrees, fly for a certain thing, and then they'd be looking for the target. So this is on. So we're talking here. We're around about mid. We're getting to sort of 11:30, maybe 11:45 on the 5th. This might be a good time to read out Dennis's description of the launch, because we've got a bit of time. He says, as we drew level with the thickest of the flak and we were beginning to make out the coastline, there came the familiar twang and jerk of the tow rope, followed by almost total silence, which from past experience told us that we had parted company from the towing bomber. And while in tow, there had been a continuous high-pitched scream of wind forcing its way through the cracks and crevices in the thin fabric covering of the wooden fuselage. The noise was increased by the fact that the door had been opened to facilitate rapid exit once we landed. And as we approached the coast, the order was given to keep quiet. Hardly a sound could be heard as the bombers flew onwards on a diversionary inland bombing mission. So I believe they were all singing, releasing some of this nervous energy. And as he mentions there, the bombers flew on and to bomb a cement factory in Caen. Then he continues, immediately after cast-off we had gone into a steep dive, a manoeuvre that had more than one purpose. Firstly, of course, pilots knew exactly where we were and exactly the point we had to reach, and having no alternative to descend, they had to lose height at a rate which would allow us to arrive at the landing zone alongside the bridges with no further height to lose. So they didn't want to be circling over the top of the bridge, because that would ruin the element of surprise. To arrive at the landing zone was still too high, and then circling around to lose height is not a good idea when you are being shot at. And secondly, the German flak was ranged to the bomber formation, and rapid descent took us away from the immediate danger of flak damage. Thirdly, it was hoped that observers on the ground would assume that the rapidly descending glider was a crippled bomber on the way down. And from around 6,000 feet we plummeted earthwards at what felt to us like breakneck speed until we were within 1,000 feet of the ground, where we levelled out to glide more slowly down and take 2 sweeping right turns to position ourselves for the run-in to the landing zone. Okay, so that seems, all pretty much. Well, you've got to remember as well, which I think is amazing, about is what these guys are about to do. They, so if I was in a large glider, 88-foot wingspan, made out of wood, plywood, I would be nervous about landing anyway. These guys are now going to do it at night, which is okay. Yes, it is moonlit night, but still pretty scary. They are not only that, they're landing at a specific point in a very small zone. So that's okay, that makes it more difficult. They're also been told that they would like to hit the fence at the end of the field. So you're basically crashing. Okay, great. That's not, not looking forward to that. Oh, by the way, some people have put some, or may have put some posts in the field to stop you from landing, which will probably rip off the wings. And if we hit one full on, that would probably be bad. If that's not good. And did we mention as well? These guys are the enemy, and they're likely, when they hear you land, they're likely to shoot at you. So, if you think about it, you don't really want to think about it. It's pretty scary stuff. We'll just run through the rest of what Dennis Edwards says. And by the way, I might have a picture of this guy. You can see what he looks like. That's Monte. It's Windy Gale. This is Lieutenant Brotheridge, Major John Howard. This is the guy. So this is Private Dennis Edwards. And so he continues. And so with our bodies tensed and weapons tightly gripped, the senior pilot, Staff Sergeant Jim Woolwork, yelled "Link arms," and we knew at any moment we would touch down. The time was 0:15 hours. As we all held tight and braced ourselves for touchdown, there was the usual slight bump, a small jerk, and then a much heavier thump as the glider made contact with the ground, but only for a moment. It jerked again, shuddered, left the ground for a second or two, bumped over the rough surface and lurched forward like a bucking bronco. We sped forward, bouncing up and down on our hard wooden seats as the vehicle lost contact with the ground, and then came down again with another heavy thump, a tug and a jerk. For a few moments it appears that we were in for a comparatively smooth landing, but just as that thought flashed through my mind, the darkness was suddenly filled with a stream of brilliant sparks as the glider lost its wheels and the skid hit some stony ground. There followed a sound like a giant canvas sheet being viciously ripped apart, and then a mighty crash like a clap of thunder, and my body seemed to be moving in several directions at once. And moments later the crippled glider skidded and bounced over the uneven ground to slide finally to a juddering halt, where I found myself perched in a very strange position in an uneven angle. I peered into a misty blue and greyish haze, and from somewhere out in endless space there zoomed towards me a long tracer-like stream of multicoloured lights, like a host of shooting stars that moved towards me at high speed. I realised after a moment that I was not being shot at, I was simply concussed and seeing stars. The noise from the landing had ceased very suddenly and were replaced by an ominous silence. No one stirred, nothing moved. My immediate thought was, God help me, we must be dead. The impact was so sudden, the multiple people in the glider watches stopped, and the time was 16 minutes past midnight. So, yeah, that's Private Dennis Edwards. Right, let's just check on. I think the cloud cover is a little bit too much, so I'm just going to reduce that a little bit. Let's try that. Okay, no sight just yet of the coast. We're coming up on it. What we're going to do then, I'm going to get to this release point, and we're going to cut the engines, and we're going to see if we can replicate what these guys did. Now, one thing you got to know is that the modern area is a lot more wooded. In fact, there was hardly any trees on the site of the Glider 1 landing zone. There was a line of poplar trees, I believe, that, from what I recall, might be lined up on the right-hand side. The German Rommel had visited at some point, I can't remember when, but it was, they decided that they were going to put some landing anti-glider posts in, and the resistance had reported to the British that the holes for the posts had been dug. The posts were ready to go in, but what we know is that before they took off, Howard knew of this information. When they were locked up in Tarrant Rushden, he spoke to Warburg and said to him that there might be anti-glider poles in the field. The sergeant just turned around to him and said, well, that's good, because it would help us to stop. The one thing, we have the coast over here. One thing, the gliders had a parachute arrest system. We know that they were probably approaching something in the region of 90 miles an hour into this landing zone, and the glider pilot basically had a lever that he could pull and a parachute would pop out the back. They hated using them because it usually meant it was a very, very hard landing. And they would rather not use them, but they would do if they had to. Okay. They've been training for a while. We know that, as we discussed before, Howard had put in tape on the ground so the guys could practice. They had no idea what which gliders would arrive at where and what. So they all knew basically that whoever got to the front, whoever was leading, they had certain jobs. So there was a contingent who would go and hit this pillbox on the eastern end, which the resistance had told the British was where they most likely have the button for blowing up the bridge. Another unit's job would be to secure the western end of the bridge, and then subsequent ones would be to clear the trench systems that ran along the canal on either side. So we're going to do this, and then we'll call that day for the stream. Or we just make sure we see where we get. So it's quite nerve-wracking. So we're approaching the coast now. As I said, there's the RAF had identified an area we don't want to be going straight to it, so when we do identify the coast, we will need to turn to the left a bit. It's thought that they came over the coast around Camborg, which is about which is this town here. There's meant to be a gap in the or not so say a gap, but maybe the outer limits of 2 anti-aircraft batteries. So when we get a little bit nearer, we'll head probably about 5 degrees off our course. So let's just get that organized now. Yeah, so we're getting close. So when we see, this is what I think they did. They obviously used the moonlight. They're going to try and spot the estuary and then maybe head for the gap. This is all conjecture, by the way. Okay, we've got some lights up ahead. We're quite lucky to have have an electronic flight book that helps us see. Okay, we can see the coastline coming up. Okay, so we're going to try and identify the estuary. What's interesting is, spoiler alert, but of the 6 gliders, glider 4 with Captain Pride aboard, I believe misidentified the estuary, and they actually fly in over the Divers estuary. So they are 1 estuary over. So we're going to see. We got the benefit of lights. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off the autopilot now. And we'll hand fly it in from here. So I believe, well, the estuary should be right in front of us here. Can't quite see it because of the cloud. Yeah, we need to just turn left a bit. Okay, so we're gonna turn about 5 degrees to the left. Gone a little bit too high. I think this bank of cloud here is obscuring the estuary, but this lights here are probably cowboy. So we're going to head to the right hand side of those lights. I believe these lights on the right are Swordbridge Beach, and where this cloud is where the estuary would be. But you can see how difficult it is, even, well, I mean, we've got street lights and electron, and I'm cheating a little bit, so it's not surprising that a lot of these guys went off course. And we're just going to need to descend a little bit. Now what? As soon as we get to the coastline, we're going to cut the engines, and then we're going to simulate gliding in. The DC-3 is probably bigger than a Horsa, but yeah, we'll manage, hopefully. So let's assume yeah, I think we're on the right course here. This, I believe, is, in fact, yeah, I think this is, these lights here are Kiborg. You've got Ustraham here. Those lights in the distance there is Cairn. We're about 1,000 feet too high. So the tow rope of the glider had a wire on it, so the Halifax pilots could talk to the glider pilot. And with 2 minutes to go, which is probably about now, they started giving the glider pilots their direction, course, confirming their height, all this sort of stuff. and so that they can prepare to be released. And I would say that this gap here is the most likely place that they crossed. You've got those lights, bright lights there is east on Herm, so there's going to be anti-aircraft fire there. This looks like the most likely place to be released, and I presume that they would wait until they're over the coast to give the signal. We can just about make out the canal down there. Now, we know that Dennis said something about being at 4,500, so we could probably drop a little bit further. We're looking like we're coming across now. Okay, so I think this will be a good place to start becoming a glider. Let's cut the engines. So we're on. The first thing they did, I presume, let's say they turned to the south and then they dived. And they needed to get down below the clouds, so we're going to head south and dive as quickly as possible. There was I think they said they looked for some landmarks, like there was a forest or something, but where, God knows how they managed to spot that. So I think we need to get down a bit further. So at the moment they're simulating a bomber being shot down. Okay, we're below the clouds. Complete guess now as to where we are. I think this is Ranville, so we start doing a right turn. I mean, I think this is Ranville here. It's difficult to see, isn't it? It's really difficult. It might be actually easier if there wasn't any lights, but we're heading due west now. presumably they fly until they see the river. Which I believe is here. Gosh, is this it here? Am I too... No, maybe not. I think it's here. Okay, so... Complete guess now, but I think we turn right now. I think these lights here are the bridges. God, I'm probably in the wrong area. I think I'm too high up. Okay, let's get some flaps down. This isn't it, is it? Is this it? We're gonna have to try here. I think we are landing in completely the wrong area. Okay, so let's just stop. We completely missed, didn't we? Oh no. So let's... Okay, this is it here. So we were aiming for the right place. We overshot quite a long way. Let's have a look at what that looks like in the daytime. So we ended up crash landing here. So we were probably a good quarter of a mile away. Our target was this point here. In fact, I think this white patch here actually is the statue to Major John Howard, and this is Pegasus Bridge. This should have been so let's just zoom back into this in the daytime. We got Easterham on the left. There is Sword Beach going across there. The clouds we know we put at about 2,000 feet. So there's definitely a lot of... There's no worries about you know, glide slope. So you know, it did make it was... it was very important to lose a lot of height because we didn't need all that height at all. So we were up here about 6,000 feet across the coast. I believe this is where they will probably come down. They flew south for a certain time. I'm not sure what landmarks they would be looking for. I think it was a forest at the time, but whether that's still here or not. It might be this forest here, this patch of forest. They aimed for this, then they turned due west, all the time losing height. Probably, maybe to when they see the river, then they turn right, and then they gotta lose. So they're coming in thick and fast, and these trees weren't there at the time. There were some poplars, and this is where they land. Number 1 glider lands here. The actual nose of the aircraft is actually resting up against the wire, and I'm not sure you can see, but there is a famous picture from above. But basically, where I'm looking right now, there was glider 3 and 2. I say 3 and 2 because I believe one of the glider 3 actually overtook glider 2 on the approach, which actually makes like glider 2 landing a bit rough. They actually almost hit this pond. In fact, I think one of the guys, there's a I'll do this in the next episode, but there's a casualty here in this area in the pond. And so yeah, they then have, within minutes, got themselves sorted out, and they're taking, running across this bridge. This brown circle here, I think, is the anti-tank gun, maybe anti-aircraft gun. And this bridge is actually a newer version of the bridge, but this is the sort of the distance that they had to cross. So they landed nearer to the eastern side of the bridge than the bridges, the canal is in width. This here is the actual bridge they moved it to. This is a museum. And they got a mock-up horse glider somewhere in here, I think. So, yes, and tomorrow, then the next episode, probably might not be tomorrow, we'll talk about the exploits of gliders 4, 5, and 6, and we'll try to replicate their approach into the bridges, and we'll go from there. But this has been going on for about an hour and a half, so we'll call that quits. You can see, by the way, the similarity, if you actually to the Countess Weir Bridge, there is some sort of similarity to it. If you remember back to the first episode when we were talking about Lechlade-on-Thames, you can see that the distances between these two bridges are similar. And whilst we're here, I just you can see that it's not obvious, but you can see the height of the land. It gives you a slight advantage if you're up on this ridge, because if you're here, you've got control, and you can see the you've got control of all that approach from the Sword Beach down towards Cairn. And whilst we're here, this is that was the glider coup de main. This area here was actually a drop zone. This is Ranville here, and there was a drop zone here in this area, and there was also a drop zone over here in this area here. So this is all this area was 6th Airborne's mission. And we'll also talk as well another aspect of Operation Tonga, which was the Merville battery and its neutralization, which I believe is somewhere around here. Sometimes you can spot the craters. You know, this looks like it here. This might be it. No, maybe not. Somewhere around here is the Merville battery, which was another a coup de main operation that was done at the time. The River Division is over here. There's another drop zone over here, but their mission was mainly to eliminate the bridges along this river here. And spoiler alert, but Captain Pridet actually takes out one of these bridges because they basically landed so far this side, and it took him a day to get back over there. But this river here, I believe there's about 3 bridges along this river, so they were taken out. And so this protects, if you take out those bridges and you control the ones on the Orne, you have the high ground in this land here. You've basically protected your eastern flank, and the Germans have to come round from the south and not from the east. So, and if you remember, all the Germans thought that the Pas de Calais was the main place for an invasion. So, any reinforcements would have to be moved down. They can't come across these. This area because it's under the British Airborne control, and so they have to come around from the south into Cairn. One last thing whilst we're here, the Halifax bombers, they continued towards Cairn, and I believe it was the cement works, which I think are this area here, was the target. So you can see that they would be flying from the coast. They dropped off the gliders, and it would look, the gliders would almost be dropping on the same angle. The Halifax bombers would then come over here, bomb this site to make it look like it was a legitimate target. It meant that they weren't going across Cairn itself with its flak. Probably then turned this way and then back out the way they came. Not sure if that's the case, but that's probably what happened. So I think that is probably a good place to end. We'll talk about the gliders 4 to 6. We'll talk about the early hours action in this area, and then we will talk about the Melville battery, and then how all the airborne troops starts dropping in this area and then come into Howard's help Howard out here. And as you can see, it gives you a great look at what the battlefield looked like from the actually on the ground, and then the distance it is to each bridge. So we'll leave it there, and I'll speak to you again next week. So this is on Twitch. It's the Recon one. I will repeat this in on YouTube. So hopefully it'll be maybe a little bit more slicker. I don't know. At least you know it's not AI. And I will see you all in the next episode.